So why am I here with two of the foremost scholars of jewelry in the world, Beth Carver and Sheila Barron Smithie, to celebrate the brand new publication of their incredible book on the jewelry of Marcus and Company. And I'm so excited to have you both here today. Thank you. So Sheila, tell me, like, what's going on? Who's Marcus and why does it matter?
Well, Marcus has been a firm that was really shrouded in romance and mystery until we came along.
Thank God.
It was always kind of a connoisseur's jeweler. They have a very kind of distinctive, idiosyncratic style even, but always made artistic jewelry.
And they were in New York?
They were New York jewelers. Sure. They built their business over 3 generations, again, always with that emphasis. And so really came to fame as one of the quintessential New York Art Nouveau jewelers.
Yeah, really at the same time that Louis Comfort Tiffany was creating things in New York and René Lalique in Paris, and really expressed their own very confident vision of what that could be. I mean, Beth, you were at the Metropolitan Museum for how many years?
I was there for 20 years, and early in my time there, we were able to acquire the collection made by Martha Gandy Fales, who wrote a great book on American jewelry. And in that collection were, I don't know, 2 or 3 pieces by Marcus and Jacques and Marcus, an earlier iteration. And honestly, I'd never heard of them. And I thought, this is a great New York story. We should be collecting them. So over my 20 years, with the help of a jewelry angel or 2, we were able to collect several pieces. And Sheila and I did research on them. We looked at each other and thought, time to write this book. So everything just fell into place. And
You know, from the point of view of a jeweler, my mom had been dealing in Marcus and Company jewelry since I was a kid. So we always knew what it was, but nobody really knew anything about it. And it's so funny in this time when everything is recorded. You had to be real sleuths to figure out anything. Tell me a story about some of the detective work you did, Sheila, because it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, we really were armchair detectives here. And one of the wonderful experiences Beth and I had together was visiting Dartmouth Library, where this archive, this trove of Marcus designs had been preserved. And nobody had really been looking at them. And we spent some wonderful days there trying to decipher this incredible mass, this treasure of archival material that the firm somehow had left behind. It had been preserved, and it was filled with hieroglyphics. We just couldn't understand these beautiful, beautiful gouaches and drawings, but filled with codes and jewelers' codes that we didn't understand. Yeah, they're all coded with inventory codes, even sometimes manufacturing codes.
Gemstone
weights
as well.
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes, you know, writing about, you know, not this shade of enamel, that shade. And these allowed us eventually, over time, to figure out a dating scheme. So, as Beth always says.
Yes. Well, it used to be that whenever you saw a piece of Marcus and Company jewelry, it was dated circa 1900, right? So now we can spread that out a little bit, actually over 50 years.
So speaking of circa 1900, let's talk about this piece. Obviously, I'm extremely proud that Macklowe Gallery is going to be debuting this in the gallery for sale. It's a piece I'd seen in museum exhibitions many times, but never thought I would have the opportunity to own it. Tell me about what sort of speaks to you about this piece. Why don't we start with you?
Sure. Well, one of the special things about it is it's part of a really small group of related signed Marcus jewels. One at the Met, the Sweet Pea that Beth was mentioning, and the other here at the Newark Museum. And these share these, you know, very, very distinctive characteristics. Their incredible 3-dimensionality, the artistry of the coloring, this kind of beautiful, naturalistic, yet flamboyant sense of color that the artists had, the designers had. And also these, you know, characteristics that I would say show that it was made by a team of people who were accustomed to working together, specialists who had skills that they developed over time, working at this incredibly high loss, high risk art. The slightest small mistake by any of these 5 or 6 gentlemen or ladies working together would have made it necessary to start over again after potentially months of work.
Yeah.
And actually one of the things we did, it's sort of off topic, but not really, was we visited a few contemporary jewelry firms where they still have workshops making jewelry. And, no surprise, everything wasn't made by one person. You had the people who did the enameling, or the people who did the gem setting, or the gold work, which is, although we can't name names, we know this had to have been made by a team.
Yeah.
Someone who was forming the gold, someone who was doing the fretwork, cutting with a soft piercing with a fret saw, and eventually, the enamelist and the diamond setting, if there is diamond.
And they all, as a team, have a hand. They have an artistic hand that's identifiable. You'll see that with Fouquet, for example, with Lalique, with others who were practicing plique in this period. They're a bunch of geniuses who figured out the plique method, but through different approaches. So give a genius a problem to solve and they'll do it, but they're different. And this is a very distinctive approach. For example, it really fights back against your eye when you're looking at it, because you're like, I know this was made in pieces, it was put together, and yet the flower says to you, no, I'm one piece. You can't see any points of connection. It just insists I'm organic. I grew this way. It's
engineering. There's so much engineering here. And in fact, I think, is this right? They would put it together at one point and then have to take it apart to do the saw piercing and the enameling and then put it back together. It was very, as Sheila says, so many opportunities for a mistake. Yeah.
I think it's important to note that this was at a time when American jewelry was not respected around the world. And Marcus was one of these vanguard firms saying, actually, we have a lot to say. We have a lot of things to say that are different from what was being said before. And I think the joy of being a dealer of Art Nouveau things is that was the moment when everybody had something new to say. And Marcus did it so exquisitely with this piece. I don't think that it's ever been equaled in jewelry since. It's really something I'm incredibly proud to own.
The three-dimensionality is breathtaking, and you get a little taste of it in photographs, but not like seeing it in person.
Yeah.
It's really different.
Yeah.
And it really is like a transatlantic collaboration, because the Marcuses did go back and forth quite a bit to Europe. The shipping records show that. And what's kind of special that we learned we hadn't known was that Siegfried Bing of the Maison de l'Art Nouveau actually was a big force here in New York even before he was super well known in Paris. He had a gallery down near Union Square where the Marcus had their shop. And so they would have seen him. He was known as Mr. Japanese Art. And so this design really is infused with that Japanesque aspect of the Art Nouveau, in the sense that what you have here is a flower where the blossoms are in full view, in full bloom rather, and yet the leaves are already entering into that kind of wilting phase. So you not only have that evanescent moment of almost perfection, but you're showing the life cycle of the plant, which is so important in Japanese art. It was something that Lalique too was so keen to show. One of his masterpieces, a bracelet from 1897, which also was one of his favorite subjects, the iris bracelet, also kind of brings that.
Available for sale here at Macklowe Gallery.
True, and examination, and scholarly examination.
That too.
Yeah, but one of the points Sheila's making, if you look carefully, even some of the cells are multicolored, as tiny as they are, so that you start to see the leaves yellowing. And we see that in other Marcus jewelry. There's a piece at the Met, a sautoir, that is has leaves that are starting to turn yellow at the tips.
Sure, and that's surface enamel, right, rather than plique jour. But
Right.
still,
It's not
exquisite. That's the one on the rope. Yeah, that's a great piece.
It is a great piece.
Yeah, and so what I think is fun about Marcus is that they began in the 19th century in New York. These German emigres started to make their fame in this very distinctive, very intricate Art Nouveau style, and then they evolved with the times. Unlike a lot of the lovers of Art Nouveau, they actually had a very easy transition, if you will, into Art Deco and then into things that were even more modern. I think we should talk about that next. Once Herman was the dad, right?
Yes.
So once Herman sort of started to step back, it was the sons who sort of stepped forward with different design ideas.
Well, he dies in 1899, so really it was the next generation that brought this forward.
Absolutely. The brothers, actually, George and William, Herman's sons, sort of divided and conquered. George was the designer, he was the artist. His hand is very easily discernible. In the design archives, you can see his beautiful sense of coloration. They were sketches that were done relatively quickly, but very deftly, very distinctively. There's always this kind of pale blue shadow falling to the right. They're really elaborate and gorgeous. While William occupied himself mainly with the business side, although he also declared to his father around 1890 that he was studying botany very carefully. So it took a while, but these flowers show
And did
that.
William run the business side?
He did.
Worked with the clients, etc.
Yes.
Although George was, George was a very good businessman too, a good salesman.
Yeah, he was described by one of the Chapin family, which is one of the Marcus relatives, as tall and handsome and always in the shop.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about who Marcus's clients were. I know that the family of Jay Gould, the robber barons, were clients certainly. Who else do we have to discuss? Why don't you take a crack at this one, Sheila?
Sure. The one of their most dynamic and prolifically collecting clients were the Wades. Cleveland, yes. They were their ancestor, who actually started out as a folk painter, transitioned to the telegraph business, as one does, and made an enormous fortune doing that. And the second generation devoted their time to Paris and New York and collecting marvelous things, leisure pursuits, and cultivating themselves, and a marvelous collection which continues to come out to market from time to time. And records in Cleveland show that they were regular customers of Marcus and some of their more really esoteric and artistic jewels. For example, they would incorporate antiquities into their jewelry, such as ancient gold. They would incorporate Indian jewels, Indian beads, Indian stones, and they also retailed quite quietly Lalique, and the Wades bought 2 pieces of Lalique jewels.
I didn't know that. Isn't that fabulous? It's great, that sort of transatlantic thing going on. How interesting. One of the things that's always so hard for me as a jewelry dealer is when we have these very special pieces is to think who was the person who owned this, because we don't have those clear provenances. We so rarely see a photo of a person wearing it, and so it's so much fun when you can trace it back and all of that.
I was going to say, I was going to mention. You asked earlier what some of the fun experiences were we had. The Rockefellers were major clients. The Rockefeller family. You've heard of them, and among our most memorable research trips were to the Rockefeller archives. A little bit. Where are they?
Up at Pocantico Hills.
It's what's the name of the town? They're in. It's not Sleepy Hollow or one of those. Anyhow, up the Hudson. Westchester. And amazing archives. And Marcus definitely figures, and some of the letters between them. And actually, even they kind of lost most of the custom of the Rockefellers when Raymond Yard, who worked for Marcus and Company from the time he was 18, I think, for 20 years or so, was convinced by John D. Rockefeller Jr. to open his own shop.
He was even 9 or something.
was he? He was really a really little boy. His father was sick. William Marcus met his father on the train, and he worked for the train company, and he said, you know, I'm worried about my son, and William said, well, he can come work for us. So there are these wonderful, actually we got a lot of wonderful backstories. Anyhow, but the correspondence for the Rockefellers, one of my favorite letters, Sheila laughs at this one, is which daughter was it who bought? Abby Rockefeller bought a piece of jewelry from Marcus and said, send the bill to father. Nice, right?
I should try. Yeah. Nobody's tried that here.
I know, that's good.
And that's great. Yeah. So let's think about what we're actually looking at here. We've got a brooch, obviously, made in the United States of America, or perhaps in France, for the American market, done by the genius Marcus and Company. It exists in 3 dimensions, and it's done with a truly novel technique known as plique-à-jour enamel. What else do you want to say about this, Sheila?
So plique-à-jour enamel dates even back to the Byzantine period. It was kind of recorded by Cellini in the Renaissance, and in the late 19th century in France, many sort of experts and shops very innovatively explored what could be done. And I would have to say that this is the pinnacle of what can be done. This particular technique, you know, we understand after long consultation with practitioners and reading and so on, would have been constructed again in parts from a gold sheet, raised as repoussé into the individual petals and leaves. Then a jeweler would have fitted it together down in the stem. It's really hard to envision exactly how it was done, but we're not totally sure. But then it would have been taken back apart, and yet another person would have saw-pierced those incredibly precise, botanically accurate cells in the leaves and the petals. From there, the enamelist would have taken it. So again, we tend to think of this unitary genius doing the whole thing, but it really was a work of many experts. And what I understand is that, unlike it's often explained that plique is done, this backless enamel, form of glass, against copper sheet, that this enamel would be almost painted in, backless, kind of suspended by the surface tension in those cells. And you could put the petal or the piece in multiple times into the oven, as long as you didn't leave it too long. And Beth, do you want to?
I mean, everything you've said, and just the fact that it could be so tiny and so precise and have so much motion. I mean, these curling petals are really astonishing, and that's the 3-dimensionality we keep talking about. But that it would be taken apart and put back together again, and each person of the team had their own specialty. You know, I mean, as Sheila says, the person who formed the gold, the person who did the saw piercing. Yeah, it's just kind of amazing. I think also we talked about it as a brooch, but is that meant to be to make it into a pendant?
No, this is this piece here, just to show you, is actually to stabilize it.
Oh, okay.
So that when you wear it, it doesn't fall over. It sort of becomes it comes the direction of the piece.
Sure, because some of them, like this one,
could be worn as a pendant.
Actually came, and we had
the
original
course.
box. Oh, we know the original box.
It had a baton type link chain, which was exactly what Lalique would have provided in his work. And it's very unlikely that American artisans could have achieved this. It's just that, you know, the French had been working on this for almost 10 years, but I would say, Ben, I don't know if you agree, but that the Art Nouveau came to a sudden kind of end, really, around 1906, 1907, partly because Lalique was ready to do the next thing. He was tired of working 24/7, and with his, you know, genius kind of more and more absent, I would say that some of the practitioners of this may have been looking for more clients. It's possible that this brooch made in France would have been left in pieces to be sort of brought back, not naming any names or accusing anybody, but would have been brought back into the U.S. in parts. And that's why it lacks the French assay marks. And this was typical. Van Cleef and Arpels practiced this for his clients to avoid the excise taxes, and they were still able to bring jewelry into the country made in France, but for their clients who loved Parisian jewelry.
When you look at this against this, the twisting and turning of the petals and leaves, and look at it against the plique à jour that other American firms were making at the time, there's no comparison. They were very flat. I mean, beautiful in their own way, but nothing like this.
And I would say even French jewelry, often there's new information suggesting that a lot of those plique pieces were made through hub and die creation of the gold frame, meaning they could have been made more than once, but it was just a whole different technique, a whole different approach. But they lack the incredible delicacy of this piece and its total uniqueness.
Yeah. I'm a big lover of irises, so when I look at the colors here and the softness of the color and the way each cell has more than one color inside of it, it really feels like the artist was capturing, really this team of artists was capturing this moment right before the iris starts to go into senescence. And I just love that about it, because there's this feeling in 1900 that things were changing so rapidly in life, and I think there's an eternal quality to the natural world that this piece really understands in a very deep and emotional way. So for me, that makes this such a successful thing. To be able to just hold it in your hand and look at it is something very lucky.
The botanical accuracy is something that the Victorians didn't really, I mean, with all their flower jewelry, they weren't quite as focused on getting it right. But this, you're absolutely right.
Yes. So we are fortunate enough here at Macklowe Gallery not just to have signed copies of Sheila and Beth's book for sale, but also to have a collection of 7 extraordinary jewels by Marcus & Company, viewable in our Park Avenue and 57th Street galleries starting on September 19th. And we hope that you will come and look at them and study, and if your pocketbook affords for you to take them home, that would be great as well.